Hey guys, this is Dustin Gotro with Fitness Reborn over here in North McKinney, Texas. Yes, it is 5 a.m. in the morning, so please excuse the scatter slow brain. I haven't had all of my coffee, but I do have it here with me, so I'll make sure I finish that up and get moving here. Wanted to do a video today to just kind of introduce what this channel is going to be. What we're going to use it for. A lot of it is going to be kind of educational purposes. So just keep in mind, a lot of this stuff is based on our belief system of how the human body works, how I address muscle imbalances whenever there's chronic pain involved or severe injuries involved, and how to actually fix them. Also, please keep in mind, a lot of these are based off of my experiences with my clients. So when I address a specific muscle imbalance, there may be some good things in here for you to try, but I highly recommend getting into a doctor or getting into a corrective exercise specialist, somewhere to make sure that your exact individual issue is being addressed. Some of these things may apply, some of them may not, depending on the severity of the issue and a few other things. So this is by no means meant to diagnose and treat your specific issue, just simply to get some information out there that may help a little bit if you're having some minor mobility issues, or just kind of send you in the right direction of where to go for specific injuries. So that being said, if you are looking for any more information on Fitness Reborn, we're here in North McKinney. Our Facebook page is under Fitness Reborn, as well as our Twitter, Instagram, all that is all under Fit Reborn or Fitness Reborn. And then we do have a web page at fitreborn.com as well. And I can always be reached through the Facebook page if you ever have any questions or looking for any kind of information. So I'll be kind of moving the camera around quite a bit today. I'm still waiting on our good camera, so hopefully we'll have that up by next week. But this page will be updated. At least one video a week will be uploaded. We're going to shoot for 2 or 3 as we can get to it, and as I get better at kind of figuring out a time to actually make these videos, and as you guys send in more comments of content you'd like to actually see, so just very specific things that you'd like to see, and we'll cover it. So first thing we're going to kind of get to here is what issue we are really addressing today. So let me readjust here. And so what we're going to look at is ankle joint range of motion. So ankle joints is something we talk about a lot, and I wanted to kind of just go over why we talk about it so much and what it causes. So just to kind of demonstrate what we're looking at, in a squat position, and I am assisted here holding on to a very, very sturdy desk out in front of me. In a squat position, in a good squat position, the ankle joint should bend quite a bit. Now you're going to notice the first thing most people are going to see is the knees are starting to come out in front of the toes, and we've always been taught that that's wrong, and I'm going to go over that in a lot more detail later on. For right now, let's just assume that everybody believes the knees should go in front of the toes when we squat. All right, so when we do that, the ankle joint is bent quite a bit. Now what you're going to notice is if I let go of this desk, I immediately fall straight backwards, and the back curls over. All right, so I'm going to explain exactly why that happens as well. For us to squat properly, the ankle joint has to be able to bend a certain degree so that the hips can actually stay stable and support the spine stable overhead whenever we start putting weight overhead or even just in an air squat. So I'm going to kind of reposition here where you can see a little more full picture. So good squat position here. You'll notice chest is up, the shoulders are back, and we're in a good balanced alignment. Again, if I let go, I immediately fall backwards and the back curls over. All right, so now why is that happening? Why can I not squat in this position that's good and safe for the spine? And the answer is the ankle joint range of motion. These guys back here, Achilles, the calf complex, they're all too tight and too shortened from not doing enough mobility on them, and from improper movement patterns that have caused them to rebuild too tight. So what happens is whenever I do let go, the resistance of these muscles being too tight is putting a lot of pressure, pushing my knees back this way by pressing the toes into the ground. All right, so we're going to kind of go through what the fix is for that. just one more time here. So I got a few different options for rolling and stretching and all that fun stuff. Move this guy out the way. We're going to go with the roller first. So basic foam roller, really, really simple. So just to kind of clarify before we go over this, the ankle joints are controlled entirely by the calf complex as far as how far can we actually bend them that way. So our dorsiflexion, pulling the toes up. When that doesn't happen, we're not able to squat properly, and that seems like a minor issue. A lot of squats can be modified to the point where we're assisted in that position. However, when we're in a front squat, a back squat, an overhead squat, it may feel easier because the weight is pushing you into the right position. The problem is, without that mobility in the ankles, that stress has to go somewhere. So when I'm holding on to something in front of me, I can force that back into the ankle and make it stretch out a little bit. And that's okay to do that from time to time without any load. When I put a heavy weight on the front of my body or the back of my body or over my head, that's when it's not really, in my opinion, it's not okay to load that weight up so much that it forces you into a good squat position. And the reason is kind of the chronic pain that most of you that have this issue are going to deal with. Whenever the ankles don't bend, remember the toes are pressing into the ground, the weight shifts to the toes, the heels are trying to pull up off of the ground. So what that's going to do is send a lot of that force into the knees. So now we're shearing on the knees, we're causing some damage and tear down there. It's typically going to bind up the hips as well, so you're going to end up having some impingement issues in the hips. And later on we're going to cover kind of how this muscle imbalance is related to every other muscle imbalance that we can find up the body. So we start looking at back pain, upper back pain in the thoracic area, shoulder blades. Even in the cervical area, we start looking at some neck injuries, shoulder injuries, and the ankle joint is involved in all of that. It may not be the number one single cause, but it is definitely involved, and we're going to kind of go over that. But for right now, we're going to keep it really basic. If the ankle joints don't bend, it puts too much stress into the knees, it throws our weight forward, and it tears down the knees and typically will cause some knee pain. If you notice that every time you run or jump or every time you squat, you have knee pain for a couple days after, that's a very clear sign that you probably have really poor flexibility in your actual ankle joints, and we need to address that. Otherwise, we will end up with an injury in the knee or even at the ankle. So to address it, there's going to be a few different techniques depending on what type of person you are, depending on if you relax easily or not. So we're going to go over just from very basic to a little bit more advanced versions of rolling. So this version of rolling is going to be with something that pretty much everybody has seen, a nice basic foam roller. The more firm, the deeper it's going to get into the muscle. So it's not a huge deal which one you get. To me, again, in my opinion, it's a lot more important that you stick with the consistency of it, that you are actually rolling and stretching every single day and not ever skipping a day, because remember, these muscle imbalances are built by bad movement patterns that we're going through every single day, and some of them we're going through all day long. So even 1 hour in the gym of doing this isn't going to fix if you're doing something wrong the other 23 hours. So we have to be spending a lot of time on this in the beginning to correct the issue. So for rolling the calf, what we're going to look at is a couple different techniques. I'm going to go ahead and fold this leg over the top for the extra pressure. That's always optional. If you get to a spot that's just really painful and it's really grinding in there, take that leg off. You don't need the pressure if it's already enough just having the weight of this leg on top of it. Okay, and so let's see if I can get a little better position for you. All right, so once this leg's over, all we're going to do is we're going to go side to side to the very outside of the calf and then all the way to the inside of the calf. Now what we're looking for is anything that the leg kind of jumps when you hit it, anything that contracts and is really, really tight, painful. Basically any discomfort in that muscle is a sign that there's some adhesions there. There may even be some scar tissue there, and we need to work on breaking some of that stuff out. And there's going to be a few different ways to do that, again, depending on what type of person you are. If you're able to relax easily, sometimes you can get away with just kind of finding a spot and then just do some leg pumps with this bottom foot pull up on it, then relax it all the way, pull up on it, relax. Some people will go with some rotations. You can even flex and release. Any kind of movement, just make sure at some point within that movement there is a relaxation. We don't want to just keep moving the whole time and keep moving back and forth. We do want to find spots, pin it down, move things around a little bit, but you'll notice each time I flex up, I allow my leg to actually relax, okay? And that's gonna get it to kind of sink into that muscle, stimulate the nervous system. Hey, we're trying to release that muscle. I need you to let go of that contraction. All right, so that is gonna be one form. My preferred form, and again, this is based entirely on what I personally prefer for my body. I don't use just this for my clients. I use lots of different techniques. This one just works best for me. So what I will do is I'll get this other leg over the top. I'll find the tightest, most painful spot I can find. So for me, it's typically on this outside part of the gastroc, so that kind of outside strip of the calf. Once I find it, I'll actually take this leg off, and I'll just leave a moderate pressure into that muscle, and I'm not going to move at all. So for me, I have a very hard time relaxing. So if you don't like massages, typically because you can't relax while you're getting one, this may be a better technique for you. We're literally just going to sit here. Now sometimes this may take 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 minutes. It takes a while to get it to release, but what you'll feel is the longer you sit on it, the more it starts to soften up where that roller's digging in, and eventually the nervous system will let it go and allow the roller to actually sink into the muscle tissue, and that's really what we're looking for. Once that happens, what I'll do is very carefully start to kind of shift over to the side, back and forth a couple times, and make sure I got all of it, because a lot of times, like on that one there, I got it to release in that spot. I move over half an inch here and I'm back on a very similar spot, so right next to it. All right, so we're going to spend some time to get that spot to release. Now I'm not going to waste a lot of time. This can take 5, sometimes 15, 20 minutes to get every single spot to release. And keep in mind, if you're just starting this, you don't have to get the entire thing to release all at once. You can get 2 or 3 spots a day, spend 10 minutes a day getting a few new spots to release, and over time the whole thing will start to let go and you can start to work on getting a little bit more range of motion in there. So once we get all of this relaxed, so let's just assume that I've rolled all of this, I got every single spot and both legs completely relaxed. Then we would go into our stretching, okay? So that's going to be a couple different techniques with the rollers. I'm going to go over another technique that is my personal favorite for if we just have really stubborn calves and they're just not releasing with the rollers, just not getting the job done. This can be done with a lot of different things. I didn't have my yoga block that I really like with me, but that is the best thing. If you have a yoga block, I would use it for this. So basically anything that's 3 to 4 inches up off the ground, you're going to prop that ball up here, and then we're just going to lay the leg right on top of that ball. Now the huge advantage to doing this is once I get a spot pinned down, you'll notice the foot is not touching anything at all. So sometimes when we use the softball, especially for the calf, that foot's on the ground, and that foot being on the ground, it just has that external feedback of the ground being there. So in other words, if my heel's pressing into the ground, there's going to be certain muscles that are going to respond to my foot pressing into the ground, and so it just makes it a little more difficult to really focus on just relax everything in that leg. And that's really what's important here on any of the rolling, is you have to actually consciously relax the muscle. If we're not relaxing it, you're going to cause some tear down in there. You're going to cause a little bit of scar tissue and probably some inflammation, which you can imagine if we have a muscle that's already irritated and really tight, we don't want to go and tear it down and cause inflammation. We want to get it to release and relax so we can stretch it out and then work on fixing the problem by strengthening the opposing muscle group, which we'll talk about in another video. And so once we're up here, this is going to be kind of that same trigger point technique that I just went over with the roller. You're going to find a spot, and then you're just going to let it lay into that spot. Now, I will tell you with the softball, it is a lot more painful. So you may want to start with something even a little bit bigger, or start with the roller and then graduate to a softball eventually. But once you kind of get used to it and you really need to get in there and get it to relax, the softball is going to be a lot more effective especially if you can get it up on something and get that foot up off the ground. Typically this one doesn't take a whole lot of movement. I very rarely actually move my foot. It just kind of stays completely limp and relaxed to make sure that I'm not firing anything around that area I'm trying to roll. Same idea, once things relax, we're just going to move on to another spot and then repeat that same process. So this is going to be, again, that trigger point idea where we're just getting certain spots of the muscle to relax. And a couple things about this, why we want to get the muscle to relax. One, the obvious reason, the muscle's too tight and it's very overactive. It's contracting when it shouldn't be. For instance, when I'm going into a squat, my calves contract and that shifts everything forward. That's a major problem with my movement pattern. And so we need to get that activity to kind of calm down a little bit, get the nervous system to stop overactivating that muscle and doing too much. The other reason is if I'm looking to increase my range of motion to make my squat better and safer and less painful on the knees, less tear down on the lower back, I have to be able to stretch that muscle out. And it's a lot easier to stretch a muscle out when the nervous system stops contracting it against you. And that's the problem a lot of times is we go and try and just stretch a muscle while we're cold and we haven't done anything to relax the nervous system, the nervous system's control over that muscle, and we go straight in and try and stretch it. And a lot of times that just causes some irritation because we're pulling on something the opposite direction of the nervous system. We have to get the nervous system to release first. Once it releases and stops contracting that area, then we can go in and stretch it and get a permanent response from it, if done consistently again. So the next thing that we're going to go over is a couple of different calf stretches. So there's a couple different ideas here. I do know everybody has their personal preference as far as dynamic flexibility, active flexibility, static stretching, what type of flexibility it is. Personally, again, as all of this stuff, just my personal opinion of what I've found with my clients, it depends entirely on the client. And it also depends a lot of times on what they're about to do. So let's say I have a client with extremely limited mobility in their calves, ankle range of motion, and I'm going to have them squat moderately heavy that day. So we're going to do some strength work on squats. I don't want their calves activating while we're trying to go down in a squat when it's supposed to be releasing. So the biggest focus that day is going to be some actual trigger point rolling and making sure that the calves are relaxing. Not necessarily that they are stretching out for a permanent response. For that day, I just need them to relax right now to allow them to squat properly without tearing into the knees and back. So on that day, I may do some dynamic stretching and just get them loosened up temporarily so that we can squat for that day. If I'm dealing with somebody that has severe knee pain, any type of actual knee injury, or just chronic pain from the calves being tight for 20, 30, 40 years, and every movement throughout the day tearing into the knees. In that case, it's going to be a little bit different. In that case, if I'm going to have that person even do an air squat, I need to make sure that the muscles not only relax by the nervous system, but they also lengthen out to allow full range of motion at the ankle joint so that there's no tear down in the knees. That becomes very, very important when you're dealing with somebody that every time they run, squat, or jump, their knees hurt. That's because the calves aren't actually relaxed when they go into those movements, and the calves are causing you to lay into the knees over and over and over again. So even just walking can cause that type of pain. And that's the reason a lot of people today have knee pain constantly, chronic knee pain, because their calves are overacting all day long and they never get the range of motion to get the strain off of the knees. So in that case, I'm going to do something more like static stretching, where we're actually holding the stretch for a long period of time to get the nervous system to let it go, and also to actually stretch out and lengthen that muscle, not just temporarily warm it up and get it moving. So I'm going to go over those two different techniques of stretching. I'm going to kind of set up the camera in a little different area here to go over these. All right, and so static stretching. Very, very simple concept here. Basically, you're going to find something to put the ball of the foot on, Typically, if you can do this near a pole or a squat rig or something that you can grab onto in front of you and pull yourself forward, great. If not, you can do this by just propping it up on a plate, a curve outside, a step, whatever you can find. And then you're just going to drive your weight straight down through the heel. So this part's really important. This is the range of motion we're trying to increase. So we're not just putting the ball of the foot here and then just letting the weight sit into it. We're actually driving down into the heel. And then you'll notice the angle that I'm getting here. This would be my starting position. I'm going to shift the hips forward to where my hips are now directly over the heel. So we're really trying to get that good angle that we're looking for in a squat position. And then we're going to hold that for an entire up to 1 minute for right now. Now that part is really important. You'll see a lot of people don't like the feeling of this stretch, so they'll get in there for 20 seconds and then they'll come out of it. The problem with that is a static stretch is designed to be held for an entire minute, sometimes even more than that in certain situations. And the reason we do that is we are trying to stimulate the nervous system to let that muscle go to a further range of motion. If we don't hold it for a long period of time, the nervous system will recontract when we release it, and now we have to start all over again. So when we're static stretching, if we're looking for a permanent response, you have to hold it for long enough. It's not a 20-30 second stretch. It needs to be at least a minute. And in other videos a little later on down the line, I'm going to go over the exact numbers on what it takes, where that threshold is for the nervous system to let go. So you can have a better idea of how long you should be holding it and what you should be feeling for in the calf when you're holding it. All right, so that's going to be your static stretching. Again, that can be done propping your foot up on a pole, a curve, a plate, a kettlebell, whatever you have laying around that you can prop your foot up on, and you can do that very, very easily. Now, going back to the initial example I gave you, of if I have somebody that just needs to temporarily increase range of motion, we're going to squat heavy today. I have a little bit of tightness in the calves. I need to get them to loosen up for today to squat. Now, with my corrective background and specializing in rehab, that's not the best scenario in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of doing that because there's still going to be some tear down in the knees. So if I have the choice with my clients, it's always all of the rehab, static stretching, get everything to full range of motion first. Then we start building the movement pattern of a squat while we build stability around that new range of motion. And then we go into actually adding more intensity. And then we go into adding weight. So weight is the very last thing added. Once everything is perfect, you have complete control over the movement, you have full range of motion, you have no overactivity in the calves. So we know there's not going to be that tear down in the knees. With that being said, I completely understand, and I've been guilty of it myself, of getting impatient with these things because it does take some time. And so there are going to be some days where people are just going to squat heavy, or deadlift heavy, or press heavy, or whatever. Call it stubbornness, call it, whatever you want. It happens. And so with that being the reality of things, I want to get as much information out there as possible to help people reduce risk of injury. So if you're in a situation where your ankle joints are restricted and tight and you're going to squat anyway, I'd rather at least give you a stretch that can help reduce your risk of injury and reduce the tear down in your knees than just leave it be and let you blow out your knees. Again, not the best situation. I would rather see people fix the problem first before they add weight to their squat. But if it's going to happen, there are some little tips and tricks that you can use to make sure that you're not just completely tearing down the knees. All right, so a good dynamic stretch for the calves is you're going to find something, and I'm going to kind of explain this one because I don't think you'll be able to hear me over here real great. You're going to find something to push against, a wall, a pull-up rig, a squat rack, something that you can put some pressure against. You're going to go into a 5-second flexion of the calf directly into a 10-second stretch of the calf. Now on this stretch, we're not trying to get massive amounts of tension or pressure on the calf. We're just trying to run it through the range of motion that we want to build. Okay, and that's kind of to prime the nervous system that, hey, I'm about to put some weight on you and we're going to go through this range of motion. I need you to learn that movement real quick so that I don't have to worry about you misfiring something and pulling me out of that position. So keep that in mind, that you don't have to be pushing down so hard that it hurts. This shouldn't be a painful stretch. Think of it more as kind of a dynamic warm-up more than an actual stretch. Okay, so here's our stretch. We'll find our wall, push against the wall, and I'm going to be stretching this leg back here just to kind of give you something to focus on. That flex is going to be up on the toes, push through the ground for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to push that heel down for a full 10 seconds. All right, after we hold for 10 seconds, we'll come back up to flex for 5 seconds, down and stretch for 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm not going to waste the whole time actually holding for 10 seconds. You guys hopefully get the idea. We're going to go through that stretch 10 times on each leg, and anywhere from 2 to 3 sets of that before you go into your squats. I have also done it with some clients where we'll do a set of squats after that stretch one time, and we'll go back to the stretch. If I still see some restriction in their squat, it's putting too much pressure in the knees, their heels are shifting up off the ground, too much weight on the toes, whatever it is, if I see it, we go back and we fix it. And we'll keep doing that until I don't see that restriction anymore. And so kind of wrapping all this up into why do we need ankle joint range of motion? You guys in the gym hear me talk about it all the time. We're constantly rolling and stretching the calves and working on the ankles and rolling the bottom of the feet. But we don't do a whole lot of explaining why do we need ankle range of motion? Why is that so important? And your answer is because that's our foundation for everything else that's above that. If the ankle joints aren't moving properly, that's going to cause some malfunctions at the knee. It's going to cause malfunctions at the hip. It's going to cause malfunctions all the way up the spine, into the neck, into the shoulders that sit on the spine. There's going to be a lot of different problems that could be fixed by simply fixing your ankle joints. And not to say that that's going to fix everything, but fixing that first is the first step. After that, we can go and assess and fix everything else. So for instance, if you're somebody that's dealing with lower back pain and you already know that your hips are tight, chances are your ankles are going to be tight too. So start working on that. Fix the foundation of your body first, and then we can work our way up and start fixing everything else that it caused. Because it is all a chain reaction. It all starts at the ground and then it works its way up. And so we need that range of motion in the ankles to squat, to walk, to run, to jump, to deadlift, to everything. We need that range of motion. If it's not there, nothing else above that point is going to be working properly. So anything we do is going to be a little bit less effective, sometimes a lot less effective, because nothing's working properly. And again, that's all a result of the ankle joints. We have to fix the ankle joints. So that kind of gives you a little insight on the answer to why we need that ankle joint range of motion. Hopefully it helps some of you. Hopefully you can use some of this stuff. For my members here at Fitness Reborn, hopefully this helps you kind of understand why we spend so much time doing this. I know you guys get bored and irritated with doing this much mobility, but I'm hoping these videos can bring a little bit of clarity to you on why we do so much of this, and why it's so important to build into your daily life routine, not just doing it the 1 hour that you're here a day, but actually learning this stuff and doing this stuff at home and making it a daily routine. So just a quick kind of recap on the issues we're talking about here, and I'm going to follow up with some other videos. Today, obviously, we spent all of our time on the ankle joints and how to actually start working on them. And I am going to post another video eventually. It'll probably be in about a month of some more advanced techniques of how to deal with ankle joint problems when they're really, really stubborn. And then we're going to start kind of talking about what that causes. So the next video that's going to be released is going to start talking about if the ankle joints are tight, here's what it causes up at the knee joint, here's what it causes at the hip joint, and here's how to start addressing all of this stuff. So we're going to start looking at a lot of hip problems, a lot of back problems, lower back specifically, and then we're going to kind of just build off of that. So essentially I'm going to take you guys through the progression that goes through my head when I watch somebody squat and I see the muscle imbalance starting at the ground. I'll kind of take you through the progression that I go through to fix the problem, always starting at the ankle joint first. So again, don't forget to like, subscribe the video, leave some comments if you guys like this information, or if you have something else you'd like to see covered. leave some comments and let us know, and we'll make more videos about it. Until next time, Fitness Reborn, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.